So these are some percussion sounds I've been making recently with kind of an interesting technique using a free plugin by Melda Production called Freeform Phase. If you don't know about Melda, you should definitely check them out because they make a whole bunch of interesting plugins, and they have this huge free bundle which includes the plugin we're going to use today. So really for this technique, all you need is that plugin and one sort of sound to start with. So to start, all we really need is a short click sound. So I'm just going to make one real quick. I'm just going to chop a very short bit out of this soundscape. I hope it has enough high end because what you start with really influences the end result. If you have a lot of high end in your sound, you're going to hear that back. But if you don't want a lot of high end, then you can use a dollar sound. It's a lot of experimentation basically, and I've just been making these sounds in bulk, so yeah, it's a pretty decent click. So I'm gonna add Freeform Phase, and we're greeted by this interface where we can basically adjust the phase of every single frequency. Now, I'm not actually all that interested in changing the phase of the frequencies. What I'm interested in is creating artifacts. So you can see that this plugin adds almost 0.2 seconds of latency, which is quite a lot. And if you play around with this plugin for a bit, you'll find out that it adds a lot of ringing. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw in something crazy like this. And what that's going to do is it's going to take our sound and just kind of smear it across time and space. So the result is absolutely wild, and at first you might be thinking, okay, how is this going to be useful in any way? Well, as always, we're going to resample. So I'm going to start the playhead a little bit before the actual sound because there's a lot of pre-ringing as well. So record that and drag it into a new channel. And now we can really start to play around with these tails of the sound and see if we can find anything interesting in there. Let's move in over here, see what we got. This already kind of sounds like a sort of wooden kind of perk. Maybe do something like this. Add a bit of a fade. It has this strange sort of almost underwater quality to it. So if we're satisfied with that, we can export it, but there's way more we can get out of this tail. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the sound into a new channel. So I'll just trim the clip and add a new fade, add a little bit of gain. Now we have a similar but different sound. I find that the further in the tail you go along, the darker the sound tends to become. But of course, who's to say that we can't do this another time? So we can go ahead and apply an absolutely brutal amount of gain to this. Yeah, that should do the trick. That's a nice sort of transient to it. You can see that being used for a kick drum or something even. So at this point I got a couple sounds out of the tail of the sound, but I can also play around with the pre-ringing. I find that if you play around with the pre-ringing, you get sounds that sound kind of similar, but they're kind of, it's kind of like they're different articulations of the same sound really. So from playing around with just one sound, I got these 4 perks out of it already. Now I want to do another one because I want something with a little more high end because you can get some pretty interesting things there. How about I play around with this cowbell sound, maybe make it a bit shorter. Yeah, this is a lot of high end, so this should give us some nice results. So you can hear that I already have sort of a tone going on, and sometimes you can even get almost chord-like sounds. And what that sounds like really depends on what you have going on in kind of the mid-range of the sound. It also depends, of course, on the input sound. If you don't have a lot of mid-range in your input sound, maybe closer towards the low end is going to be more prominent for the tone. So you can hear that if I go around 500 and just like remove all the peaks, we've lost our tonality entirely. And then if I reintroduce a big peak like this, you can hear that that frequency kind of keeps on ringing. So we can use that to create a couple peaks next to each other, and that tends to give you kind of a realistic sort of percussion sound. So going through the same process again, resampling, chopping it up. That's interesting. I got sort of a cowbell sound, but there isn't as much high end as I was hoping for, so I'm going to try to play around with the pre-ringing. Yeah, and you can already hear that this has a much more glassy sort of texture. It's like you're tapping your window with your fingernail or something. But at the same time, it also has sort of a low-end quality that you wouldn't get out of that necessarily. If I go a bit further, it kind of sounds a little more metallic-y. That's interesting. And further still, it really sounds like a bell. So the fun thing about this technique is that it's something that you don't necessarily really have to think about. I find that if I do sound design, if I make percussion with an FM synth, for example, it's a lot of fine tuning and tweaking. And I find that with this technique, you can make a lot of samples really fast, and all of them sound at the very least kind of decent. So if you spend like an hour making samples like this, not all of them are going to be super great, but there's going to be a couple ones in there that are really nice to work with. And that's the great thing about this technique. It's kind of a no-brainer in a way. So yeah, if you want to download the samples I showed in the beginning, I put them in my Discord server. You can join that through the link in the description. And finally, it would really help me out if you subscribed or left a like on this video. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.